Come on to
Okay.
you.
For the throat. My name is Princess De Leon or Prince, and I'm a fine arts painter and woodworker, and I work in a lot of different mixed media mediums like rice, beans, resin, wood. And yeah, I tend to paint mostly people of color, specifically African Americans and African, and a lot of my friends and family. So yeah.
I kinda wanna get straight into material. Obviously, I noticed that you use rice and use other green and, like, things that make your work look very three-dimensional.
Hmm.
Especially the piece behind you, African Booty Scratcher. I saw, like, on your social media that it started off as a painting, and
Hmm.
then later on, it kinda transformed into a more three-dimensional piece because of the rice.
I think African Booty Scratcher gave me my voice in terms of like, oh, if I want to be an artist, what kind of things do I want to talk about? And I felt like, okay, I'm talented, I can make good imagery, but like what is my piece saying? So I started with African Booty Scratcher. Actually started from a class assignment when I was at the University of the Arts. I had this professor, Laura Wordy, and Lauren Wordy, excuse me. And I remember she had us read Glitch Feminism, and she wanted us to think about what that book was saying and what we wanted to say as artists, and sort of like our glitch within the art world or within just being a human being. And that book, oh my God, that book resonated so much with me because I think all throughout my childhood, I felt like an imposter, or not even an imposter, but a glitch within a very coded world. And I didn't feel like my coding was, um I think my coding was messed up from all the displacement and things that I experienced. And African Booty Scratchers was one of those glitches, if you will. And man, that made I was I wanted to be as vulnerable as possible because after reading that book, I felt inspired to speak on the things that were a part of my experience. So as you know, like booty scratcher is a slur. It technically is like you could say it's kind of like similar to the N word. Another person calling a black person the N word. So I was called that a lot as a kid, going as being an immigrant coming from Liberia at the age of 4, and a lot of that had to do with other black African American kids calling me that, which was such a very visceral experience. Like your own kind is telling you you are lesser than. And I wanted to speak on that. And that was the first time I really, because before I was using a lot of imagery from other artists and I didn't really have my own voice and I was just trying to experiment. But then it's like, okay, who am I? What is my work saying about me? Or what do I want to tell people? So I just wanted to talk about that. I was like, that's a shitty thing to have gone through. And like, why isn't this talked about even more? And I knew I wasn't the only one. At first, it was, yeah, very flat. I did, Booty Scratcher has, it's oil and acrylic, but mostly oil, mostly acrylic. I used collage. I went into Photoshop and I collaged a lot of different pictures together. I used Basquiat's one of his self portraits, and I loved how weird it looked because, like, the blackness and the shape of the mouth. Because I didn't really have an image to look at, like when I was thinking about Booty Scratcher. It was just more the feeling of, like, I don't know, being othered that I
Yeah,
wanted to convey.
yeah.
So I love the way Basquiat did one of his self portraits, and I use that as a reference. And then I collaged in like the eyes and the very colorful background, and then the what are they called? Those plants as well in there. So yeah, and then over time I added textures because I wanted people to have a more visual experience. I'm all about the ways in which my audience looks at my work. I want them to I want them to stay for longer. I don't want them to see it go, "Ooh, ah," and then go away. I want them to come up close, and I want them to question why I used the things that I used. So it became more of than just like conveying the experience and having the materials also, rather than just like the image. The materials should also convey. So in terms of speaking about materials, um, using things like rice and resin started to get explored, and it was all experimental. I'm very thankful that I had UArts and all the different professors there, Peter Rees, Laura Frazier, Mark Campbell, to just kind of have me push what I wanted to say. Nothing was off the table. So even though I was a fine arts painter and a lot of my friends were, painting on straight canvas, I could go downstairs to the wood shop and carve into my background and, use different things like rice. I remember going into the wood shop one time and I was asking Peter Rees, I was like, oh, I have this idea and I don't know how it's gonna look. And he was just like, okay, let's and that made me feel very powerful because it was just like, when you're a creative, everything's up here, but to make it a tangible thing is another, process. So to have someone who knows how to utilize different techniques and things like that to say, oh, I know how to do this and you have this idea, let's see how we get there, made me
Yeah,
feel like anything
yeah.
was possible.
And also, I bet it feels great to have that kind of sense of freedom as a student because this idea of being a student sometimes can feel like,
Mhm.
I don't know if I'm able to X, Y, and Z. And it's like, no, you can actually be your full self and like express,
Mhm.
but like only not all spaces kind of allow you to feel like you can do that.
Yeah.
So it's amazing. I'm happy to hear that like you had that experience with the piece.
UArts was an incredible school. I think people don't really recognize how much it had to offer in terms of just, I mean, I think one of their main mottos was, learn the rules so you can break the rules. Teaching us that we as artists we can be as expansive as our imagination calls for. The mediums weren't limiting to us. I mean, dance and music and design. I took a semester where I was just taking everything because I loved everything. So I was like, let me see what,
Yeah.
um, but I really did appreciate that school. So when it comes to wood, using wood in my work, I love wood because it's alive. um, I think I don't know. I think when we think about nature and how much we as human beings disconnect ourselves from nature when we technically are nature to me is very interesting. Trees are so essential. They mean they're keeping us breathing or keeping us alive. And it can go for decades. I mean, there's like some trees in different parts of the world that are like thousands of years old. And even when they die, they react to their climate. So, like me using different things like plywood or hardwood, the wood can warp in different conditions if it's humid or whatever it may be. And I think that is so beautiful and also relatable to my experience as a person who comes from displacement and also sort of have gone through resilience. So I think my material is very much connected to me in terms of showcasing me and my experiences. And rice, when it comes to rice, I mean, I eat rice every day. I think it's just like as an African person, I was like, we eat rice for every, different stews or whatever it is. So and that was something that I was made fun of at school, coming to school and bringing cassava leaf at the lunch table. And the kids are like, oh, what is that? What is that? But it's so essential to so many different cultures. Like it's found everywhere. There's like I think over 100,000 different kinds of rice species over the world, and that to me is like incredible. It could be a poor man's food and a rich man's food. So it's just kind of like I
Yeah.
don't know something,
Kind
you
of the one
know.
thing that connects us. So what are we really talking about, girl? By the way,
Yeah,
did you go to a public school or
yeah.
okay.
Yeah. When I came here at 4, I kind of had very interesting, I went to and I lived in Staten Island, I lived in Philly and Tennessee, so I went to all different kinds of public school. Went to, IS-49 in Staten Island, PS-13. So, yeah, they were all public. Yeah.
Yeah, I wanna get more into that, but before we get there, since we're talking about material, I was curious about the carving knife. Because like, we often describe artistry as, like, alchemy or, like, a way of, like, taking experiences and making them beautiful, which you do, and
Mhm.
I feel like as artists we do, but also, like, I feel like it can also be a way of, like, paving or carving a path or maybe, like,
Yeah.
reforging a path that was already there but kinda, like, forgotten about. So using, like, the carving knife and literally, like, carving through this wood or um, these other materials that you find yourself working with, what does that do for you? Like, on a symbolic level and literally.
I think it's all about labor, like, and even speaking back to what I was saying, humans disconnecting themselves from nature. There's a lot of, I mean, when I think about, or when I would study a lot of my work has to do with so much research. And me being an immigrant and having come from an immigrant family, we there was so much labor. Like my grandmother would go to, I told you about this piece that I'm working on. She would go to New Jersey on the farm to pick different, native vegetables and bring back, and she would cut the collard greens. You should search up on YouTube, like, um I know it's not specific to West Africans, but West African women like cutting collard greens. I know like here it's different, but like, man, black women are amazing. My grandma would put these the stems of collard greens, and then she would just have it like in a ball, sharp as knife, and just, and I thought that was like so insane to me. Like, anyways, that's just a little Easter egg. But I thought like watching that as a kid, there was we were always working, always doing. And I was around a lot of people who were like, if you weren't doing anything, it was kind of like a thing of incompetence almost. So I feel as though my work, me carving, me using resin, or even like me down to the tiniest bit of detail, me color coordinating the rice to place it in certain ways in the piece, speaks to human interaction with nature. In order for us to sort of mimic or alter nature, we have to work with it, labor with it. I also think that speaks to the process, when people look at my work and they see all these details, I want them to know that my hand is embedded in this. Especially when it comes to wood, I'm essentially carving myself into the piece metaphorically. And I don't know, I think that has a lot of power. It can speak to a lot of different things symbolically or whatever have you. But I mean, my work takes a lot of time and a lot of labor. And when people, oh, how long does this take you? It's like, it took me a while. It took me a while, and it's just me. But I do love it. Of course, it's a lot of hard work, but I love it because when I step back and I'm like, damn, I don't know, there's something amazing about that.
Yeah. And also, like, just thinking about the piece that you've been working on for months now, and sometimes, like, the break is a part of the labor, I suppose.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if you've had this sort of thing with dealing. I mean, I know I deal with incompetence a lot. It's where it's like if I'm not doing something, I feel sort of not worthless, but just kind of like, what is my use? Like if I get sick and I can't come to the studio, I'm like, it's hard for me to take care of myself. And I think as creatives too, even if you're a content creator, because even making content is a lot of work in itself, resting is so essential to the process. And I don't know, self health and self love is very much like, all right, the piece is responding to you. So you need to, you know what I mean? So it's very important as well.
I like that idea, the piece is responding to you. And literally, like, I I think for me, like, going into dance training so late in my life, I feel like I knew that I had to be very caring to my body because it wasn't
Hmm.
used to certain things.
Yeah.
And so I think for me, like within the past few years, practicing taking care of myself has been like such an important thing. But like there's also
Hmm.
still times that like sense of like, no, but I should be doing this. And I think it's really for me about like coming back to the fact of like, like without me being well, things can't become um
Hmm.
yeah. But
Yeah.
speaking of Bridget Mayer Gallery, which is where African Booty Scratcher was featured,
Hmm.
I didn't know you were in that gallery when I was still in Philly. I think I was still in Philly around May, and I wish I knew because I
Hmm.
would have to see it. But at that
Yeah.
time, I I think I started going to that gallery specifically. I found it randomly because I would go to Washington Square Park a lot, and I just, like, fell in love with some of the art that I saw and, like, the color schemes and, like, the worlds that were
Mhm.
created. How did you feel being featured in that gallery, and, like, what's your relationship to the space?
Yeah, I mean, Bridget Mayer, she's amazing. She does a lot for the city. I think even like learning about her and her come up as a curator and art, business owner is so amazing to me. I actually was told by my one of my professors from UArts, Michelle Kashida, who recommended that I signed up because I think you she was having it was a group show for I think like 100 and something works or something like that. And so I made like a smaller version of Booty Scratcher to showcase in the show. And I was excited. I was excited. I mean, the size they gave us just I think the only limitation was the size. And that was it. I kind of already knew what I wanted to do. She really loved sort of like the abstractness of Booty Scratcher and so I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna do that. So I made like a smaller version of Booty Scratcher and instead this was my second time I think doing it where I used the exact reference from the original one, but instead of using paint for the face and the black, I used Korean black rice to sort of push the textural element within the piece. And I think they loved it. I mean, that piece sold so fast, and I had people commenting on Instagram, "Oh, I want to buy it." And I think on Bridget Mayer's page, and she was like, "Oh, it's gone." And I'm like, so it was exciting. I was really happy people it's always so good when people it's one thing when people like your work, but when people want to invest in it, it's like, okay, thank you. So I was very honored to have been chosen for that because I mean, she's such an impeccable person within the city of Philadelphia. Um, but yeah, yeah.
Also, Michelle is the professor whose work I saw in the gallery that day.
Yes, her work is
I
yeah.
was gagged because I remember, like, I knew she was a painter, and I remember I had
Hmm.
a meeting with her once, and we were talking, and she was like, "1 second," and I was like, "Okay," and then she was like,
Hmm.
"Oh, sure, I just sold a $7,000 painting," or something like that, or $17,000 painting, and I was like, "Girl, okay," and I didn't
Yeah,
know. I
she's
was like,
great.
because I remember, like, literally being in the gallery that day, and I was looking at all the paintings, and I went in the back, and I think hers was in the back, and I looked at the name, and I was like, wait a damn minute,
Yeah, I know.
this
That's
girl."
another.
Okay, so the book, Glitch Feminism, has been on my list for a while, but it sounds like you recommend.
Oh yeah, I highly recommend it. I actually want to reread that book because it's so good. It was like my second time getting some kind of project based on that. Like I remember, I don't know if it was freshman year or sophomore year, they gave us like a PDF excerpt from the book, and I was, "Oh, this is interesting." And then for the class, for Lauren's class, we had to read some of that. And I actually got the book. I was like, "Oh, let me like read this." And I was like, "Oh, this is actually really cool." It speaks I feel like it explores a lot of different parts within identity that for me as a person, I think I needed to read about and sort of like understand that this othering is technically like the glitch is actually the power. Like it gives you the uniqueness. Like I know people always say like, oh, like if everybody looked the same and had the same ideas, it'd be boring. But I mean, yeah, I mean, in this society, I think everybody's trying to code it to be liked or to sort of they're assuming what people would want them
Yeah,
to be or whatever it is that we sort of dial ourselves down rather than pushing the parts of us that are unique that make us so different. Um, yeah. So I highly
man.
recommend it.
Okay, thanks for telling me that. I have a photo of it because I went. Okay, so I met up with someone from Philly here in New York in summer of
Mhm,
2023. They pulled out some books that they recommend that I read, and Glitch Feminism was one
mhm.
of them. And I took a photo of it, but I never came back to it, so I definitely will be circling back to it.
It's small. It's a relatively short book too. Yeah.
So the term African booty scratcher.
Mhm.
When was well, if you can remember the first time you heard this term or, like, when this became, like, something that you were aware of? And also, who was it used for and in what context?
I think I was like, I remember, yeah, it was in PS13 when I was in Staten Island, that I remember hearing that PS13 or IS-49, one of them, the schools. And of course, it was by another African American kid. They would say a lot of things at that time because I lived with my grandmother in Staten Island, so I would always come to school with some cornrows in my hair. I mean, it's my grandmother, you know what I mean? Like, she's older. So I feel like for them, I was like the epitome of what African looked like.
Yeah,
I
for
brought
sure.
stinky food to school, and my hair was plaited and I smelled different. I had a little bit of an accent, and I was very dark skinned. So it was just like I'm a walking target. So yeah, I think I don't exactly remember the exact time, but it was numerous occasions that that would kind of happen, and it would say, New York kids are brutal.
You can't do anything. You can't
Like,
do
the
anything.
the harshness of the jokes, and not even like, okay, you have bullying, and then you have like kids will say some stuff that's like, damn,
It's like,
like,
dude,
you know,
I was just sitting here.
and the thing too is like they like to group up. It's like the gang kind of mentality of like, okay, it's one thing you calling somebody out, but there's a group of them. There's people, there's an audience. And then it makes you feel like, that man. So yeah, I think when it would happen a lot, it was like, oh, that's why your breast thing, you African booty scratcher. That's why your mama, you don't know where your mama is, you African, so it was always just, it was like a mean thing and then the slur.
Mhm.
So it's just kind of like, okay, you have this because you are this. And it's like, damn, hold up. And I also think at that time, early 2000s, this whole trendiness of Afro beats that's happening right now was not happening then. So I think a lot of kids, um what was very mainstream, like I remember watching TV, and when they would show Africans, it was either, like I was saying to you before, it was either Nat Geo showing, a white guy going to different tribes in Africa where the women have their boobs out and things like that. There were some positive ones, but then there was always those ones that was kind of like, this is how Africans are in the villages. They're eating these kinds of food, or it was like feeding the world, and you would see like the little black kids, and they have these big pop bellies and flies swarming all around them. So I think there were a lot of positive representations of Africans, but there are a lot of Africans immigrants within the US. So it's just kind of like, to have heard that was just so, it was hard. It was very hard, especially hearing it from other people who looked like me, that made it even very visceral. So I think it really messed up my self-esteem. And then, at the same time, having being displaced from the war, my African family, my Liberian family, we were trying to sort of, what's the word, assimilate to the culture here. But we were still, my grandma was still very heavily rooted in her Liberian culture. We eat rice like every day, fufu, so, and I hated that because I wanted to really assimilate. I wanted to be an African American, not an African. So it was really hard. And the funny thing about this, yeah, I don't mean to keep talking. If you want to
No.
jump in, let me know. The funny thing about this was, like, as I got older and, obviously I wasn't experiencing that bullying anymore and going to art school and also reading the glitch feminism thing, I was like, okay, I want to paint about booty scratcher. I have to figure out, I know how it feels. I know what that, like what that meant to them. But what really did it mean? Where are they getting this? What is that? And I started reading about colonialism and all these different things, but also like reading about Liberian history specifically. I didn't really have any knowledge at that time about Liberia or anything. It was actually kind of like a negative thing. Like, if you do something bad, we're going to send you back to Africa. Like, America was like the fucking, North Star for all immigrants. And it was just like, we're here, if you want to ruin this opportunity, you can go back and. So Africa was never a positive at that time when I was younger. So when I got older and I was like, well, why is that blah blah blah? And then I started reading more about Liberian history. I was like, oh shit, Liberia is tied to America. And like, I mean, not only is Liberia tied to America, it's crazy to know that these same kids who look like me telling me to go back to my country, not knowing the history of their own ancestors. Are you like that shit? That shit blew my mind. I was like, yo, this
Ignorance
is
is so brutal and it's so dangerous.
it's
And
crazy.
like I can very clearly having this conversation with you right now, I can very clearly see myself as a kid in the public school system in my little white shirt like this and like black school pants, and just like
Yeah.
with other black and Hispanic kids and
Hmm.
having like African transfers or immigrants come to our school and like remembering that the disrespect. Um, hmm, I feel like America is so good at kind of turning a culture against itself or
Hmm.
kind of making people want to erase themselves to feel safe. Like how you said you didn't want to be an African anymore, you want to be an African
Hmm.
American, whatever that means.
Hmm.
Um, just coming back to the sense of like you learning these things, and besides like glitch feminism, and learning about Liberian history, how did you start to come to see yourself more clearly? And like, what are some other books, media, or artists
Hmm.
that have instilled this sense of like value and love and like true self worth in that regard into you?
Yeah. When I was growing up, I didn't have a lot of figures to look at, and I'm pretty sure there were, but I didn't have a lot. And especially being a dark skinned black girl, it's I think it was just like a lot of self hate caused inflicted by other people. And when I started getting older, what was I gonna say? I read this when I got adopted by my moms. They gave me a book. They gave me multiple books, but there was this one book called The House on Sugar Beach by, it's not here. Forget her name, but her essentially it's a autobiography about this woman who grew up in Liberia and her ties to like one of like the first free blacks from America that sort of colonized or made Liberia what it was. So she explains like how it was growing up, and she was very wealthy, all these different things. Like I just never in my mind like thought Liberia was like ever like quote unquote civil. So reading about it and learning like when they first came here and all the different things, or they first came to Liberia and the impacts of colonialism. Because I think also when I was reading the history, learning that a lot of the free slaves that created Liberia were quote unquote house slaves, light skinned slave, sort of doing the same thing that their oppressors did to them you know. And she talks about that experience for her, even having a quote unquote sister that her mom got from another she got this little girl from another tribe in the village to sort of be her sister because she wanted another sister. And this girl had a totally different life than her. She was dark skinned, like she grew up there's a lot of different tribes in Liberia, and she was a Bassa girl. And the thing about, I'm not gonna get into it because I'm not the most historical person. I don't want someone to like, oh, that's not fact check me. But it was just really informative. And I could see myself not necessarily in her, but like a lot of the things she was saying, it made sense to me. Because when the war happened, she then had to come to America, and she went through a lot of bullying. She went through a lot of just like, oh, this is like a totally different thing, even though she grew up very wealthy in Liberia. So it was just interesting to hear somebody else's story who could also relate to me. And then I was also learning about the history of Liberia at the same time. So that I think that really changed a lot of my outlook on my country, and also going to school and learning and seeing other, learning about other artists like Carrie James Marshall, this sort of like visual activisms through art making. When it comes to painting, not just making a pretty picture, but what is this picture saying?
Yeah.
What are the themes that these paintings are talking about? And Kara James March, I mean, his work is just phenomenal, but so much history and context within that man's work. It's absolutely brilliant to me. Even Njeke Crosby, a Nigerian woman who I don't know if she's based in London or something, but she's married to a white man, and she talks about that. And she also uses a lot of different photos from her culture, from her family within her work. It's just like I think that made that had such a positive impact on me. Even seeing um what is La Pizza Nyong'o in 12 Years a Slave. Oh my God. Seeing a dark skinned African woman, and I know she is more than just that, but a woman like her, brilliant actress, intelligent, but also just beautiful. Like the way in which that change of how dark skinned women are being represented in mainstream media start to change really had a positive outlook on me, especially my younger child self. It made me feel like anything is fucking possible. Even when the world is constantly spitting out horrible stuff, there are people who are changing that. There are people who are still pursuing their dreams and still sort of like counteracting those narratives.
Yeah.
And that made me feel powerful in my being as a person with all the identities that make me me. So yeah, those are I would say some of the people. And also my professors. My professors made me feel like I could do anything. UArts was really the place that pushed me as a creative, but also made me feel like I could talk about the things that I went through, and they never shunned me. I had friends like Faye and David, other Nigerian, even I don't know if you know her, Zainab Desmond, who's a phenomenal painter, but they're also African people. Like they come from different cultural backgrounds and made me feel like, oh, I can do whatever the fuck I want. And people can speak on it, and that is what it is. But my process within my work, but also as my process within me becoming and learning about myself is for me,
Yeah.
you
Period.
know?
Period.
Yeah.
Going back to
I don't know if
Lupita.
that answered your question.
No, that's
Sorry.
totally good, and it wrapped it in a bow so beautifully. And going back to Lupita, representation is so fucking important. Like, representation is everything. And even just like being a little kid and watching like Disney Channel back in the day when they took like representation serious back then. I don't know what's going on now, but like,
Yeah.
like those little pieces are so important. And I want to share some pieces of media with you that kind of have
Mhm.
helped me or guided me really to like a sense of self beyond the information that I was giving when I was younger.
Yeah.
I remember over the phone, I mentioned to you that like when I went over to London, I found a book called Before We Hit the Ground by
Mhm.
some Ammonia.
Yeah.
And
Beautiful couple.
it's wild. I found this book on accident. I wasn't gonna buy a book that day. I was having a
Mhm.
job interview, and there was
Mhm.
a next door to that place. And after I left, I went inside, and I was just looking around because it was a queer bookshop,
Mhm.
and this book was like sitting in the window. And I decided to grab it after reading like what it was about. And essentially it's about this young boy named Elam he's born in London and
Mhm.
he's descendant of Ghanaian immigrants and he is queer and he just struggles with feeling seen really, but in a very like distorted way that is like on the surface his life seems like it's great, it seems like it's fine, he has a good job, his parents are
Mhm.
alive, they have this house, his sister's super smart and she's struggling, and he has this partner, but like internally he feels so unseen. And I don't want to give too much away about the book for you or anybody else watching, but
Mhm.
I definitely needed to learn the other perspectives in this book because while I resonated with Elam, even though I was born here in America, my family, my dad's side, mostly Caribbean people. And even though I'm kind of off from that half of me, I didn't really grow up with that culture,
Mhm.
but it just helped me see like how queerness gets lost in translation within a culture because of certain things. Like for example, the book
Yeah.
is narrated from all of their perspectives, his mom, his dad, him, and his sister.
Yeah.
And so it starts with his mom instead of him, and we get to see, like, way before he's born, like, how his story began from his parents living in Ghana, meeting there, moving to London together, and how the struggle that they had as Black people trying to work and trying to survive, like, how that kind of stifled any kind of attention they could have drawn to what queerness is or other things like
Mhm.
identity, because to them it's like, well, we provide for you and we're
Yeah.
giving you things that we didn't have, you know, and so you're good, you're fine. But like
Mhm.
often I feel like within our different communities as Black people, sometimes identity gets like it gets treated like a luxury, like to be able to focus on such a thing, you know, when
Yeah.
it's so important. Like, it's kind of it's more important than anything else, even though, like, it's easy to fall into survival mode. The author of this book did such a good job at showing how a person can be given things, but still not be giving what they really need in terms of, like, knowing who they are. And even just, like, because I know you can when you recall those times being in school and hearing these
Mhm.
things, I'm sure you can count on one hand how many times an adult stepped in and corrected somebody. Even those people were misinformed. Even those people were trying to get their paycheck and go home and feed their families, and they didn't really stand for something, you know? And I feel like that's what art is for.
I would like to say I'm a visual activist, but I think right now in my work, there's a lot of self growth that I'm going through. Like when I was speaking on the canvas as a response to you, for me, it's like a meditative experience. I don't know, a lot of people say that it sounds very cliche, but for me, it really, it's me processing a lot of the things I've been through as a child. And even to also speak on what you were saying, mm, I feel as though people say they love children, and Whitney Houston sang that song, "The children are the future," and
Yeah.
RIP to Whitney Houston. No disrespect. It's not about Whitney Houston. It's just I think people always try to convey this narrative that we love children, children, and and to me, it's like people don't. It's not to say that they don't care, but they aren't as cognizant of the adverse experience that children face. When you face stuff as a kid, how impactful that is to your adult experience. So to bring things like shame and all this stuff into the picture, or even me talking about booty scratcher and trying to piece it together. I've had a professor even ask me, "Why do you keep wanting to talk about this? Why do you
Mm,
keep wanting to say booty scratcher? Isn't that like the N word? Like what are you over it yet?" Or even some other kids, other black students who are like, I remember going to a meeting, I think it was specifically for black students at UArts, and I was talking about, "Oh yeah, I've gone through this," and there was another Nigerian kid in there who was like, "Oh yeah, I can also relate," and it felt so empowering for me.
mhm.
And then I remember hearing one of, I don't know who it was, who was like, "Oh, okay, well, I'm sorry that you had to go through that, but those kids didn't know what they were doing. So, basically like, you should get over it." Like, you know, and it's hard because I think sometimes too with American society, like there's always this identity politics and people are always saying that you want to be a victim. No, I don't think of
That
myself
shit,
as a victim. But
that
also,
gets me.
yeah. Yeah, it's like, "Oh, you wanna be a victim, you wanna be" No, it's like, when I was technically a victim, I didn't even see myself, I was a
Yeah.
child. I didn't even see myself as that, and it's like, now as an adult, I'm trying to process these things that I went through because as a kid, I did not have the means and the mindset to really understand what was happening to me. Like children, as a child, when you're not allowed to be a child and you're trying to process these very, very complicated things, especially when it comes to trauma, like you're living with the bear, but you're sugarcoating the bear because the bear is your mom or the bear is, you know what I'm saying? Like children, like going through that, people don't understand how impactful that is psychologically on a child's developmental growth. And then you have people who are adults who are constantly acting out because they didn't get to be children. And sometimes it's excusable because it's like, oh, you went through this, or sometimes but it's just like maybe we should actually start paying attention to kids and the things that they're intaking and the things that we're giving to them, the stereotypes we're inflicting on them, all these different things. I'm trying to work my own shit out, you know? I think at this point, I'm really just trying to give grace to my younger self.
And honestly, it feels really good to hear you be so honest about that because I feel like that's what a lot of artists are trying to do. And I don't know what it is. Again,
Mhm,
going back to like American culture in the sense of like victimizing yourself, I feel like a lot of people feel afraid to be open in that way because like there's this fear that like somebody's going to see them as somebody who's trying to paint themselves as a victim or whatever that is. And I was talking to an author recently who does a lot of YA queer books for this series, and their name is Marco Shiro, and they told me that, they are literally they write these books for the sense of healing their inner child. And they said, I'm gonna be very candid about that. I have no shame in that. And it just so happens that people resonate with it. And it feels like
mhm.
I'm doing service work. But like it just so happens that this is so many other people's stories too, and that's why it feels like
Yeah,
I'm doing, some kind of labor or being an activist, but really I'm just working my own shit out, as you said, and
yeah,
it's actually a lot more universal than we think. Like a lot of people connect with this, and that's why it feels so
mhm,
special in that way. And like for me as a writer specifically, it started as me just needing a place to go and be super honest and kind of step out of any kind of monolithic experience that might have made me feel trapped or like projections or what it might mean to be a black man or whatever,
mm,
and like reclaiming myself and who that really is beneath all the layers.
yeah,
I would say my creativity is really a dance with identity and being super honest. And like there are some times where I also wonder, like how long am I going to be processing these things? But I think it's always going to be like as long as I remain in conversation with myself in that regard, everything's going to be fine. Like this is going to take time, and it is, but there's power in it like you said earlier. When it comes to like
mhm,
stuff that you kind of wanted to let go of, wanted to push
mhm.
down. Like now it's like it kind of happened in reverse. Like now you're finding that that's literally how you're making coin. And other,
Yeah,
I mean, like it's how you're
yeah.
reaching people. And no,
Mhm.
like those kids, where are they now? You know what I mean? Like not to be that person, but I'm
I
just gonna
mean, yeah,
say
nah, yeah. Yeah,
it.
it's really amazing. Um, I don't know. It's really amazing. I think there's a lot of stuff happening right now, not to shift the conversation, but there's a lot going on, and people have a lot to say about everybody else. And the same people who have a lot to say aren't even reflecting on themselves.
At all.
So I think honestly, you can only give those people grace too because we're all going through different levels of our life. Some people are in a space of healing, and some people are still in the process of being assholes. And that is fine. You know, it is what it is. I think it's just like you have to, well, at least for me, it's just take everything with a grain of salt and be just kind of curious. It's like, also not giving so much energy to everybody's shit,
Yeah,
'cause that's a lot of energy.
that's a
And, like,
lot.
if you thought of energy as money, is like, you ain't paying my bills for me to be paying you with my time and my like, I don't think it's worth it. And I also think there's also a lot of context to people is like, they say hurt people hurt people. I think that's what's really happening right now in the world. To be existing in a time where like so in your face, while I'm also very self-aware. I'm just very grateful that I'm just very constantly thinking and talking to myself and unlearning right now. I'm in a space of unlearning a lot of things. So I, you know, I don't know. I think I've been a lot of hurt where it's like, I think there's also power in not hurting other people, you know?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. And I think that's how powerful art can be because art is very communal. I mean, Philadelphia, you think about how much Philadelphia, like the murals within Philly, all the different there's so much art within Philly, and I think Philly for me as a person who's constantly been through different places, I think Philly for me is like the right home right now because there's just so much artistry and so much people doing amazing work.
How does Philadelphia impact your creative process?
I think it's very like, I met my parents here. I got adopted here. I just love Philly. I love that there's so many trees here, and like it's
Yes.
funny
No.
because there's a
Oof, the
lot of
tree
trees here.
so beautiful.
Yeah, that Quaker man. I always call him the oatmeal guy. That's on top of City Hall when he was planning out the layout of Philadelphia. He wanted to because I think a lot of the trees are indigenous here. He wanted to like he named some of the streets like Pine, Walnut, all of that. Even Rittenhouse Park, a lot of those trees. I just thought the way he planned that out was really cognizant of the nature that's already here. Because we have it's a city essentially. There's a lot of it's concrete, but then you still have trees and things like that.
There is a mural that I love. It's not there anymore, but it's this
Mm,
mural called the Rise Above mural. It used
mm,
to be I have the street name in a poem that I wrote. I'll probably read that at the end as my, like, show and tell
mhm.
moment, but it was and I'll edit this into the footage, but it was like this image of an angel, a dark-skinned angel with, like, a halo and then these, like, wings over the city, and it was so beautiful, and I found it on one of those walks that I told you about, and, like, in the summer before I left Philly, I was walking in that same area, and I was like, "Where is this damn like, where is it?" Because it's usually somewhere around here. Is there
Yeah.
something wrong with me? And I just couldn't find it. And then I Googled it and I found out that they took it down. And it was like over with gray. It was like right on the side of this flower market slash like hardware
Mhm.
store. And yeah, I don't know why. I don't know what happened.
Yeah,
But that
that
was
sucks.
personally my favorite. Any murals that you love specifically in the city?
Yeah, there's a mural right on Broad Street. I think it's like mm, Lombard and Broad. I don't remember the title of it, but it's kind of like theater. There's like a girl, and there's like a man dancing. There's like so much going
I
on,
know what
and
you're talking about.
I just love that mural.
She has some kind of silk.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and it's like some of it's like coming out almost like there's texture. Like I love that mural.
Okay, so I found something, like, in regards to that mural specifically. I
Mhm.
typed one of my, like, image bank walks after that. It's called "Billowing Silk and Golden Cloth," like, from the woman in the
Really,
thing.
that's crazy. Okay.
Another mural, "Broad Street secrets are trapped in the mouth of a woman wrapped in silk. Fabric covers her mouth. She is silenced, but her eyes are quiet or quite telling." Yeah,
You wrote that.
yeah, it's on my website. Wanted to talk about this concept of like the back room. Are there any pieces of art that are for your eyes only, or like things that you make for just the sake of you and not with the intention of sharing at all?
You know, I've been thinking about that lately, and I want to start doing that. I want to start making for myself. Do I have any that I mean, I feel like booty scratcher is that, like, I'm not gonna ever sell booty scratcher, I don't want to. Um, like, looking because I have, like, this big container here that I keep my work in. Um, so there's, like, some that I'm, like, working, this is finished, that is unfinished and things like that, but I don't think there's, like, one specifically that I would say is for my eyes only. But I do like that concept. Like I think I want to start making things that are meant for me. I need to put this out more, but
Can you talk a little bit
I,
about the blue tones?
the blue, because my work has a lot of, it's mostly black and white, and I do that on purpose because I like the timelessness of those colors. Use a lot of, if I'm going to be painting, which I mostly paint people of color, black people, I either use blue or purple to bring out a little bit of color within the grays and the blacks and the whites.
Obviously, we talked about childhood and like that sense of impact on like becoming aware of certain things at such a young age. I'm curious to know like what were your paintings like when you were a child? What was it like creating with less political awareness?
Painting as a kid, I read a lot of manga. As a kid, I was like an anime geek. I loved, Naruto and all that stuff. But before even getting into anime, I would read a lot of graphic novels. I loved books. So I would go to the library and they had a graphic novel section and I would just read all of them. But specifically mangas, in the like in the back of the book they would have like the artist's like sketches for some of the characters or whatever, and I love the lines in the drawings, and that's actually what made me really like art because I was like, wow, you can see the process of the artist, and some of them, like, the sketches were like fast but so intentional. So I started copying what the artist's sketches. I would go to the back of the book and I would get like a pen or a paper, pencil, whatever, and just try to imitate what they did. And apparently I was really good at that. After some time, I just started doing my own drawings, which are kind of like just like superhero people or different Disney cartoon characters. And then as I got older, like being a teenager, I started customizing. I would paint all over my clothes. Like if there was a certain brand, like I remember Kanye had like Yeezys and stuff, and he had his name or just different prints or whatever on the back of some of his shirts. I was like, oh, that's really cool. So then I would do that. And then people would actually buy my stuff when I was younger. Like kids would give me their shoes and be like, oh, I want you to paint this. And they would pay me. And it was great. Art was my way of getting people to see me. So when they saw that I had talent, it made me more interesting. So for me, I do think as fun as art was at that time, I was doing it for other people. So when I before I went to college, I was thinking about like how can I fall in love with art than falling in love with it for others? How can I do that? And I started, I actually went to UArts for animation, actually. I went there because I wanted to work at Pixar and do all this stuff. I guess that's where the love of like graphic novels and all that comes in. But eventually I changed my major to painting and fine arts because I thought it was more tactile. And the tactile comes back in me finding my love for art for myself because I remember this fondest memory. I don't know if you ever did this like when you're in like kindergarten or like middle school or whatever. It was like the first 100 days of school, we had to make like 100 things to celebrate it, right? And I remember us doing like a macaroni thing. Yeah, I don't know if you did that, but like it was like, okay, so I remember my class, we specifically had the macaroni and we had to make like a picture, like 100, like it had to be 100. And I remember like we put the glue and on the with the macaroni to put it down on the paper to make some kind of image, and I loved that. I thought that was really effing cool. So I think that memory and being tactile and like glue and macaroni and it's like a medium. I think that informs my practice now, even though I didn't see it before. It's kind of like child's play almost, yeah. And I didn't realize that until, like, very recently, but I think me finding my love for art for myself and also sort of having this kind of play within my work, me having to like, with this piece right now, having to have intentionally put the rice grains in certain areas, as hard as and annoying as that it was also fun, you know? Like, I think as creatives yeah, it was as creatives, it's kinda like kind of bringing that childlessness back into art making because like art making for me right now is a business and you know it's different but I still want to be in love with what I do, so I think yeah that definitely yeah impacts my work.
Thank you for answering that so beautifully. I
Great.
wanted to do a little show and tell moment. So
All
if
right.
there's anything that you wanna show or share or talk about that, like, has some kind of meaning for you right now at this point in your life, I would love to see it.
Yeah. um this pillow that I'm sitting on, it's a pillow, it's a my mom made it, it's like my cat's, and this cat specifically, her name was Bella. She passed earlier this year in, March. Was it? No, April. And yeah, it's a hard time for me right now. It's like the holidays and, my she was very much like just a really good cat. She was my best friend, my first love, and when we would get the tree and stuff, she would always go under the tree and snuggle there. She's just an amazing cat, so I think it's hard for me right now to, be mourning her. When you lose someone, you see different parts of, like, the ways in which they existed, the spaces that they took up in, that they no longer take up in, and it kind of, like, hits you differently. Um, so yeah, I think this pillow it means a lot to me even though I put my butt on it. It's comfy for my butt. But when I see her, yeah, she makes me just very happy.
What's your other cat's name?
Oh yeah, Coco. Not so that's that's Coco.
You're like, "Oh, that's Coco."
Some love too. Yeah. What about you?
Okay, so I wanted to share with you that poem that I mentioned that I wrote from the Rise Above mural in Philly.
Mhm.
'Cause I don't know, there was something about it that just meant so much to me, and then just the fact that, like, I felt like I had such a close relationship to that piece, and then, like, to one day be roaming around the city and, like,
Yeah.
being so used to seeing it and being like, "Oh shit, this paint, like, it's gone." And, like,
Mhm.
literally I had to, like, Google where exactly it is to find the building, and I was holding my phone up to the building to see, and it was
Yeah.
just painted over.
Yeah.
But I wrote a poem about it, and I wanted to share that with you. It's called Rest in Peace, Rise Above mural. His wings were cut by brushstrokes in mid-May. I was appalled to see the shapes of his chest cast away. Covering the image of sprawled wings and bled words was a minimal hue of gray, resting over the star like a vicious overlay. How eerie that made the start of May, his vision, his song no longer on display. I walked in the heat to find the mural, seeing birds play, searching for the gazer's floating halo and white wings, which once hugged Bainbridge Street. That's the street. I
Mhm.
found the mini mart left astray, though like the stain of the sky's blue in my brown eyes, the image is still ingrained. Come with me. Thank you for joining me for this. This means a lot. I really enjoyed it, and I really love seeing your studio and
Thank
getting to
you. You gotta come.
I would love to. First of all, I'm definitely gonna come back to Philly soon because 'cause it's been such a while.
Mhm.
I would definitely have to come by and do a studio drop it.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it's nice when people want to conversate and talk. I normally am just either writing or talking to myself. So yeah, I appreciate you giving me the time.
I feel that deeply.
Yeah.
Wait,
Yeah.
before we go, actually, there's one more thing, if that's
Mhm.
okay, that just came to mind. Seeing you walk around your studio when you were looking for this piece of, like, memorabilia, I
Mhm.
saw, like, Instagram videos and, like, how you said like, you share, like, your creative process through these, like,
Mhm.
reels. And I was curious to know, like, what prompted you or when did you arrive at that point where you decided to utilize that as a tool to, like, kinda share your voice and, like, give a little insight on your
Yeah, well, I've always been in love with, like, movies, media, cinema. I mean, I went to I said I went to UArts for animation, which is technically in film. So I was learning a lot with, like, editing and things like that, and I was good at it. I love editing, and I also love, like, editing to the music, like, different songs. So when I switched my major to fine arts, I remember I was in junior studios with my friend JL, and she recorded me just dancing because I was always dancing in my studio, and all my friends were like, "Oh, you should, you know, record this or something." And she recorded it. Like, I think it was like my first reel, and I had put like, when you're an African artist or something, and like the beat is hitting. So I was like, okay, like, this is fun, and but I also think it's another over time, I realized it was another way for people to get to see my work, and also, like, again, I said, like, the phone is a tool. So it's a different way of marketing myself. And also in my captions, I write a lot about what the pieces mean to me, my process, and it's also, I think, um it's another look into the making of the pieces. Like, people get to see the final product and it's, oh, it's amazing, whatever. But then when they see what I'm doing, like, I just made a reel that has almost 100,000 views, which is like insane for little old me. And it's me literally painting the rice and then putting it onto the canvas, and people were like, "Oh, that's amazing!" All this, and that for me, it's like makes me feel just nice that people are connecting to the work or even just liking the way in which I edit the videos. And it's fun for me, honestly. I just like to do it. One day I want to like have like I want to get better equipment to really, do some better level editing and whatnot. But yeah, it's just
Yeah, it definitely shows more of your personality, which is always really fun to, like, be able to enjoy that and take in. I
yeah.
lied. That's not the last question, I'm so sorry. There's something that I
It's all
missed,
good. It's all good.
and I can't skip over this 'cause it felt really important when I wrote it down. Going back to the painting that's, like, right on the side over here of the woman
Mhm.
tending to the garden, you posted something about your process making that, and in the caption, you talked about faith and, like, trusting the process, and it made me think about this thing that I found when I was in Philly. It was, like, something about having faith in the absence of proof, and I wrote it on
Mhm.
a piece of paper, and I, like, folded it and, like, put it in my pantry in the
Mhm.
space that I was there. But yeah, I wanna hear more about that for you and, like, what that feels like for you, like, being able to stay consistent and, like, create without having an audience, like, that what is that, like, private experience like before the shows or before whatever wherever things might end up?
Yeah, art is very and being a painter is a very isolating experience. I'm very um blessed to be able to afford my own studio and have a practice that I can constantly show up for. Um, but yeah, it's also very unnerving, I would say, or nerve wracking to because a lot of my stuff it's experimental. Like, half the stuff that I do I've never done before. Rice is it's only been maybe 2 years since I've been using it, 2, 3 years, doing larger pieces. But a lot of it is like this trust in the unknown as a person who loves perfection and wants everything to be. I think that's also why I love art, because it's like, okay, I'm using a reference and here's the collage of what I'm expecting it to look like. It'll never look like that. And I love that. Like, I'll be doing something like, oh, actually, this color is reacting this way in the light, or how am I going to paint this with the rice in the background? All of that is requiring me to be very intentional, but at the same time, it's very like out of my control. Because at the end of the day, the whole piece is going to have it's going to look different. And I enjoy that. And I enjoyed that a lot. And I also, one of the reasons why I was saying it's a very isolating experience is because I'm by myself making these decisions. So that's why I think community comes in, where because I had my UArts community, having people come to the studio just to not to say like, "Oh, your work is nice," but rather I love critiques. I want you to tell me, "Oh, maybe this is working or not working." For me, it helps me. Like to be challenged. Or I have some of my old professors who don't even live that far from me come and help me, who have helped me actually with this project alone. Majority of this project, I commissioned my old woodworking professor, Peter Reese, to create the panel for this. So I think there's a lot of aloneness, but there's also a lot of like communalness in a way. And I appreciate that. But I think not having so much control with the work is probably the best thing for me because it creates something that is just, I don't know, it's just something that's like, I didn't expect to do that.
Thank you for your time, and I hope that this felt good for you. I hope that this felt like, a
Yeah.
nurturing thing in a sense,
Oh, most definitely.
and we
Yeah.
will
I'll
keep
send you
in.
some books that I recommend. Yeah.
Yes, and can I send you some things too that I really loved and feel like.
Most definitely. I would actually really appreciate that. Yeah.
Yeah. Alright, I'll send you that message at some point, but it was really great to talk to you, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
You too. Thank you.
Alright,
Bye.
see you.